Okay, here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is. I hope it's good to be where you are because it is really awesome to be here today. My name is Baltimore Fats, and this is Boopolis. Yeah. Okay. All right, here we go. So, road trip. I got to take a little road trip to Annapolis last Friday. Got to spend about a half an hour roaming around one little neighborhood. But before I jump into Annapolis, I just wanted to point out my tunnels are still here, my god hairs or whatever, and they're running through Kent Island, and that's, I think, going to be important later on. I don't know. But anyway, so let's zooming in on Annapolis here. One thing I want to point out is how terraformed the city appears to be with these straight edges, in this 90-degree angle here, right? A couple 90-degree angles here. The civil engineering, or maybe perhaps the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, I don't know, might be responsible for some of this, but I do want to show that this is something that's been in the works because this is a map of 1860 Annapolis, and we have a lot of straight edges here. So going back that far, this project seems to be going on, if not earlier. So I think that's kind of interesting. So zooming in on Annapolis here, this is the neighborhood that I looked around in here. All right, it's specifically along this stretch of road right here. And when we were coming into the city, I noticed along here some trenched out windows that I wanted to investigate. And so like I said, I had just a short while to do this, but I need to start at a slightly different location here. So when we were driving down this way, and I noticed, and then we came down and we parked, and I got a little coffee, and I was on my way. And I wanted to work my way back up here, and we came down this little side street here, which is really cloaked by Google Earth. You can't even go on this. You can only go up like a little bit on this. Or no, I'm sorry, the street's here. You can only go up a little bit on this street. But when I started here on this corner. All right. So when I was walking down that street, I noticed this retaining wall. And so now retaining wall is a big point of interest for me recently, the removal of the earth and that kind of thing. And I've been paying a lot of attention to retaining walls, and I touched on this early on in Mud City a little bit. But when I was in Philadelphia and in the Philadelphia road trip, around Independence Hall is when I really started to click with how much removal of earth there was, because they flattened it all out around Independence Hall, but left the square of Independence Hall, raised. And there I have one shot, you can see a car go by, and it's, well below the wall. Unfortunately, I did not, because I was in such a rush, I didn't get as much coverage as I would have liked. I didn't get full building pictures and things like that. I was looking more for features, and I figure I could use Google Earth as a supplement. Here is now this street, and you can get a good shot of, this wall goes all the way up this street, and how much earth had to be removed to build the street and these houses, and it still kind of slopes down here, like this alleyway kind of slopes down. So that was really interesting to me, and I was ping-ponging around, here's another shot of the wall, this is from across the street, and the steps that go up, and that building that was there is the Annapolis Elementary School. And just to give you like some scale, this is my cane because I'm blind, right? And it's a 58-inch cane. It's 4.5 feet or so. Wow, whatever 58 inches is, I'm not going to do that math right now. But it's about shoulder height to me, just to give you some scale. And it goes up the length of this road. And I did climb up a little bit onto the school property, and I looked down at the neighborhood here, right? And it made me curious as to when these houses could have been built, seeing how much earth was taken away. I picked this one, right? And so I looked at the Zillow for it to see what information it could give me, and it's 191 Green Street. And it tells me that it was built in 1895. So that's not too surprising because they had steam shovels and stuff by 1895, at least according to the official narrative. So it kind of fits that they could haul away that much earth around then. So not surprising with that date there. But I was curious, so I wanted to look, you know. And here's a little bit of the school. I didn't, these windows are low, but not beneath the ground. They come, let's see, can I get up a little bit closer? Yeah, they don't go quite to the ground, but I have a feeling that this building was rehabbed in more modern times. And this is that first building, and this is what really got me, was looking at this building and seeing how the earth came up right up flush to the side of it. Right, so does the retaining wall. And so this just makes me think mud flow. And this is what they dug out, you know, create this street and so forth. But they left this building still partially submerged. Why not dig this out? I don't know, you know. So that makes me think mud flow. I don't know. There's some more shots of it moving right along. And now I'm changing position. And I moved now down to this street. Where's my cursor? This street here, which was the street I was trying to get to, because I knew the building I wanted to see was just off of it, because this is the street we came down. So I found my way back there, and I'll come down on it a little bit. And here it lists this giant playground. Now, again, with the condition that I have, it could be that this playground is exactly as it is now, but to me, it didn't, you know, when I was looking back at my pictures and first looking at Google Earth, it was very different. It did not look the same. And in here, if you look closely, you can see a copyright for Google of 2017. So this image is some 2 years old, so it could be very different. You know, who knows the amount of work they could do, because all I really saw was this sort of swing set here, and there was some like seesaws and whatnot. I did not really notice like a massive playground. But again, yeah, I tend to miss some things. But I was looking up the street and I noticed these steps here cutting into this hill and this retaining wall. All right, so I wanted to investigate that, and here's the front of this house, which has steps going up. And now you can see this house from Google Earth. It's this house here. We'll get up a little bit more on it. And so these are those side steps, and this is that front stairway that I just showed, and I'm going to show again. So, you know, this house, of course, and you do catch a little bit of those magnetic waves in this one, but it looks more modern, right? The windows don't look like the old school, like warehousey type windows that we see all over the place. But the door is still really high off the ground. Not only do you have to go up these steps and walk around, go up these steps as well. You know, so there's like 2 flights. You go up these steps. It just, I don't know. It just doesn't seem right to me. And especially I like the way that this is uneven and it kind of looks bent, you know, or shifted anyway. You know, just very curious to me. You know, and definitely, and just to showcase that this retaining wall is on the other side of this retaining wall. Where was it? Here. So this is the one retaining wall, and then on the other side of it here. Right, so this whole area was a mound, right? And they dug out around the streets around it. So I thought that was kind of an interesting connection to make. And so I'm going to continue up this hill. And just to also show that this retaining wall goes all the way up this street as well, right? And it stops at the intersection up here where we have this church. And at the time, I didn't know what this church was. I know now it is St. Mary's Parish. And that's going to get a little more interesting in a minute as I come. I did not stop to read the sign at the time because I was in a rush and I just wanted to look for certain features. And you can see even here has the magnetic stuff on St. Mary's. So there is a house on the corner here. So there is a house on the corner here, and I have a couple pictures of that house as well, because it has some interesting features like these air conditioners that go into the dirt. Right? And this doorway or window or whatever that was at one point, which they have half boarded up. Yeah, I don't know what that's all about. And then on the other side of the stairway, there's these low windows that go right flush to the ground. And so now I'm getting up to the top of the street here, and I'm going to turn right because this is the house where I saw those trenched out windows. And so here we go with those. And here they are. And so I walk up these steps to take some pictures of the trench. All right, and now from the sidewalk level, I would say that this trench is probably 5.5 to 6 feet deep. Now, I was up on the steps and I did this little experiment, which I hope to do more of stuff like this. I can't believe I never thought of it until now, which was to take my stick fully extended, hanging from the lead, and it did not touch bottom, and I was leaning over as pretty good, you know. So from where I was, I would say it's probably an 8-foot drop, but from the sidewalk, 6 foot maybe. And, looking down, the rest of the house is, this doorway under a door. And I get up a little bit closer on that. All right, and I come around from the other side, and you can barely sort of see a doorway in there. And a further trench with this stairway that goes down, and there's a door there, and it's really narrow. 18 inches, no more than 2 feet at most. All right, as the stairway, you can actually see it get more, it decreases. It gets more narrow as it goes down. And from the top, this is a solid 2.5 feet or so. And it goes down to about 18 inches, I would say. That would be my guess. All right, and it stops with another door down here. They made this archway over the trench so they could create access to this door. And so I thought that was really interesting. And now in hindsight, I went and I wanted to look up that address, and I found that it was 112 Duke of Gloucester Street, which I thought was interesting. I was like, why is the name of a street in Annapolis Duke of Gloucester? And I'm going to get to that in a second. But this house was built circa 1774. Now, getting more and more curious, especially noticing that that building is pretty much across the street from St. Mary's Parish, and this is St. Mary's High School. Here, that it's kind of dug out as well, and I have some pictures of it, which I'll get to in a moment, but it's landscaped, and it has steps to get up in here from the street level. All right, but what I'm going to do with my slideshow as I have it set up is I'm walking down this street further, and I come to this street, and if you zoom in, you can actually see what I'm about to show you in my photos. These here. Oh, and before I get there, I saw, this is probably even that same building. All right, the stairway going down, and then these, yeah, I didn't stick my camera down in there, but, this is, hallmark stuff when you're looking for, mud event buildings, and this has definitely been patched up many times, and I think this banner has been there since the Revolutionary War. I don't know. And at the end of the street is a firehouse, or at the end of where I stopped walking, which is right here, because I had limited time and wanted to get back to that church to see what I could find there. But one thing that I noticed in my slideshow, or when I was taking these pictures rather, was that this door was very flush, and that's what I expect to see in buildings. You want to see doorways that are relatively flush, maybe a step or two, to get into these buildings. They certainly took care of it for the fire department so the fire trucks or whatever could get out. And I noticed that across the street was this door. It's got a couple steps to go up, no big deal there, but when I look at this, and unfortunately I did not get a good wide shot of this building for whatever reason, I don't know why, but again, I was in a rush, and so that wasn't my priority. Is this transom space up here, which is boarded up. Maybe there was a window at one point, or like a transom window there. But I look at this window, and if I were to try to find the top of it, it'd probably be about here. You bring it over. This is a window that was blown out to be a doorway. All right, that's what I see when I see stuff like this. And just to point out what building that is, it's Annapolis City Hall. has that door. So that's kind of interesting. All right, and so now I've done this. I'm walking back down this way, and I'm not sure if it's this building. I think it's this building here. Has these features. That one and that one, which was interesting. And then I come to St. Mary High School, which is that building with the courtyard. This one here. All right. And so I'm walking along St. Mary's High School, following the brush line here, which is, masquerading the foundation line, all right, really well. I'm going right along, and at the end, I come to this, and I'm like, oh, hello there. Let's take a closer look at thee. Yeah, get up in on it. There's definitely a window back there, and it's, an easy 2 feet down on this one. So I wanted to find out what I could find out about St. Mary's High School, and there is a wiki for it. Right, and it says that the high school was founded in like the 40s, right? It's 46, right? It's a Roman Catholic school, of course. And it says it's part of St. Mary's. It says that the church in Paris itself date back to 1853 with the arrival of the Redemptionists in Baltimore. So I was like, well, who the heck are the Redemptionists? And here they are. And look at their seal. Can you believe this seal? This is the Congregation of the Most Holy Redeemer. And now a lot of this episode, and I've been joking to myself, it's like, who put my Mud City in Baltimore? Who put my Baltimore in Mud City? There's a little bit of crossover information, but a lot of this stuff is going to come out more so in probably Baltimore, actually, when I get into Maryland in the church. But unbelievable that this is their seal, right? And that the church in this high school building were, I'm assuming, built in 1853. And that, so now, this, when you see a window like this in a date like 1853, all right, that kind of falls right in there with our time frame, maybe. All right, and at the end is this wall, which encases the church. This big wall that they have. And I couldn't get in there. All right, and it goes all the way down the street. And there's a door, which I pulled on, but I couldn't get into. All right, but one thing I want to point out about St. Mary's, and I'm going to have to go back to this sign here when I was coming up the street. And I didn't notice this at the time, but I did find out a little bit later. The Carroll House is on this property. And I'll show you what that is. And I think it's amazing that, all right, here's the chapel. Here's the Carroll House back here. It's interesting that the Carroll House is on the property of these the Congregation of the Most Holy Redeemer. There's no coincidence there, so I'm going to have to find out more about that. Again, probably in Baltimore. So I wanted to find out what I could find out about Annapolis, right? And, it's the capital of Maryland. It's the county seat of Anne Arundel County, and it's on the River Severn, which I didn't know. And it shows its distance from Washington and Baltimore and so forth. And, Washington resigned from the Army. There was a Second Continental Congress was there, as it was a lot of places that one moved around, because they were on the run, allegedly, right? And they first call it, when it's first settled, they call it Providence, but then they change it to Anne Arundel's town, after Anne Arundel, who is the wife of Cecilius Calvert, 2nd Lord Baltimore. But it's also heavily involved in the English Civil War. And I've been reading a book about Maryland's involvement in the English Civil War, and it's been a great read, and I can't wait to share that information down the line. But when the dust clears, the governor changes the name from Anne Arundel's town to Annapolis in honor of Princess Anne of Denmark and Norway, who's soon to become Queen Anne. So got my answer about Annapolis, so I wanted to find out about the Duke of Gloucester. So here we go with the Duke of Gloucester, and it's a royal title after Gloucester. So I wanted to look at Gloucester, and it says that it lies close to the Welsh border on the River Severn, and so Annapolis is on Severn River, and so I thought that was a pretty interesting connection that they named that river after this river, and southwest England, close to Wales. I'm sure there's no coincidence there, right? I'm not going to go into the town of Gloucester or Gloucestershire or whatever, but because I want to find out more about the dukes there, because it was named after the Duke of Gloucester, right? And so there were 5 issues of dukedom for Gloucester, with 2 others styled after. That meaning they were not officially created dukes, but they were called dukes, Duke of Gloucester. And so the first thing it says is that it's a royal title often conferred on one of the sons of a reigning monarch. So you have to be a king, a son or whatever of the king or queen, right? And it was first conferred on this Thomas of Woodstock. But I'm going to get to that in a second. I'm going to go down, right? So here they are, the Dukes of Gloucester. So the first creation was 1385, and it was this Thomas of Woodstock out of the House of Plantagenet. And so now the House of Plantagenet has a lot of interest to me. When I first started spitballing the idea of Baltimore and Baltimore, I came across the House of Plantagenet, and of course, just the root word alone, plant, which you have your planters and your plantations and so many other things, right? And Plantagenet itself is a small yellow flower, but it's a royal house from the lands of Anjou in France. And I like Anjou. It sounds like a sauce or a mustard or something. All right, so I wanted to I'm not going to get that deep because, again, this will come up in, this will probably be Baltimore, because the intention is to start Baltimore with the settling of Maryland. But so the House of Plantagenet was founded by this guy, Geoffrey V of Anjou. So I, just to follow it through, I wanted to kind of find where are the beginnings of this house. And the reason I'm sharing this is going to become apparent in a little bit. So I wanted to trace it back further, to its beginnings. And so they say this is the guy who starts it, right? Geoffrey Plantagenet, Count of Anjou, right? But they list his predecessor, and so I'm guessing this is it's not his father, I don't think, because his father. Oh, this is Geoffrey's father, not Thomas of Woodstock, who was the first Duke of Gloucester, or Gloucester. All right, is this Fulk the Younger, and it's this Fulk, King of Jerusalem, and I'm like, what the fuck? Right? King of Jerusalem, what? So the House Plantagenet comes from the European Crusaders, Christian Crusaders, who take over Jerusalem in the First Crusade and rule Jerusalem as kings. So I think it's pretty amazing that I can tie the Duke of Gloucester from the street name in Annapolis to the Crusader kings of Jerusalem. There's not a coincidence there. So it's kind of amazing because Mary was kind enough to share with me the other day that the 4th of July is when the First Crusade, when the siege of Jerusalem happened, right? It says June 7th to July 15th, but here it says on the July 4th, 1099, First Crusade ends with the death of 900 Jews in Jerusalem. And so what happens was they break the siege, they get into Jerusalem, and they allegedly, this is the story here from the Messianic Jewish History, WordPress.com, and I read it, I'm not going to bring it up now, I'm just going to surmise it really quickly, is that they herd all the Jews into the synagogues and then burn the synagogues to the ground. 4th of July, 1099. So, there's that date for you. Going back with the Dukes, there's no way that this first creation has anything to do with Annapolis or anything like that. And I want to find out, why is Annapolis a street, the Duke of Gloucester Street, right? And the second Duke is this House of Lancaster, Humphrey of Lancaster, right? And then the third is, he actually has the name, Richard Plantagenet. Now you have to remember, these are all children of monarchs. And he's from the House of York. The other one's Lancaster. Now I haven't done the War of the Roses yet, because that's going to come in Baltimore. No, Baltimore, excuse me. The fourth Duke is Henry Stuart, right? And he dies at a young age. And now it starts to be known, hinted at, that perhaps the Duke of Gloucester is a curse, because none of the dukes have an issue. There are no heirs to their dukedom. right? And after each one dies, they wait until the next king has a kid, or however many kings or queens later, and then they create a new Duke of Gloucester for one of their children. Right? And there we have these two styled dukes, meaning they were never officially created dukes by the crown, but they were known. They were called the Duke of Gloucester. And I believe Prince William here is the one that they name the street in Annapolis for, because he is the only child of Queen Anne who was a sickly child, and he dies at age 11. And so I think if you name your city after Queen Anne, and one thing I wanted to point out, this is the Duke of Gloucester Street here, and this is Queen Anne's Parish, and this is the State House. But Queen Anne's Parish, Duke of Gloucester Street, I think they probably named that after her son when he died. That's my guess. I don't have any official word on that, but just what the information tells me. But I was reading more along, because then they have this stylized Duke in Prince Frederick, 1717, House of Hanover, right? And then we go from 1726 all the way to the fifth creation in 1928. Okay, so for your viewing pleasure, I've decided to split this into two parts. But one thing I didn't do in that last one was just point out that the second creation and the third creation, we have the House Lancaster, House of York, and the House of York guy's name is Plantagenet. I didn't get into the War of the Roses. I will in Baltimore somewhere. Interesting that these are all the Dukes of Gloucester. Okay, so I'm going to pick it up in part two with Prince Henry, Duke of Gloucester, and we'll see you there. Cheers.